Hilary Cronheim, welcome to A.PUTNAM's Women in Golf. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to hear all about what you're up to, how you transitioned into this role as senior director at USGA Museum and the World Golf Hall of Fame. And I know there's so many things going on there, a big movement of all that. So down to Pinehurst, I cannot wait to get into it. So we love to start this very easily with how did golf come into your life? And I know from what I hear, it was later in life.
Yes, yeah, I came to golf relatively late in life, didn't grow up playing it, didn't grow up around it. I started playing when I was in graduate school, working on my PhD, so probably in my early 30s, I'm gonna say, and just started playing as kind of a release from the grind of writing a PhD, which is true and real.
Yep.
And then sort of became hooked and kind of ended up in this roundabout way in this role where I am now, but also my husband grew up around golf. His family owns and operates a golf course. So as our
Cool.
relationship was kind of building, I got more into golf that way. But yeah, it's a relatively
I
new
see it.
journey for me.
It is, which is going to have us backing up much further into your resume to hear how you came about your position now. But so, from an introduction to golf standpoint, though, was it your husband? Were you guys dating and that's how you started golfing? Or was it just like a friend? How did you? Because a lot of women, I think, even later in life, it's a very daunting thing to just like hop into.
For sure. That's a good question, and I don't really remember the answer to that. I would say when I met my husband, I claimed to be a much better golfer than I
Mm.
was. I mean, I
Yeah,
said I shot about 100. I was an intermediate golfer. That was false.
that's so cute.
So I pretended that I was better. No, I mean, around the time I met my husband, my family was starting to play more. So it
Hmm.
was kind of a gradual thing,
Yeah, how
and
neat.
then just kind of took off from there.
That's
Exactly.
so cool. So we're gonna go through, we're gonna back up, and I'm sure we'll get to the point of like, are you playing more, all that good stuff. But born and raised, where are you from?
I'm born and raised in Chicago.
Okay.
North Shore, Lake Forest. Lived
Hmm.
there a good part of my life, but spent high school, college, and graduate school on the East Coast. So I've been here in East Coast since I was 14 or 15. But
Okay, yeah,
Chicago,
feels
born
like
and
home.
raised.
There you go, Midwest
Exactly.
girl at heart.
Exactly.
So, I mean, were you an athletic girl? Were you an artsy girl? Like what? Because obviously you took the art path and art history and all that. So, is that something that started really young?
So I did play sports growing up. I was a big tennis player, big squash player. So I played high school tennis and squash, loved it. Um, Paddle tennis, racket sports. Not a huge competitive athlete, but just always loved it. For sure, for me, the museums have been kind of a part of who I've been since I was a kid, 4 or 5. That nerdy kid going through the museums, listening to the audio guides. So that's really kind of the continuity of my journey, much more than sports, actually.
That's so neat. Would you say that the role you're in right now, like when you were younger, was that like a dream? Did you have like in that younger phase
It's
of your
crazy.
life that memory of being like, I always thought I would have some profession or want to be a part of the museum?
I always knew that I wanted to be in a museum. It didn't
Hmm.
necessarily matter what kind of museum it was. I mean, I never would have imagined that I was in a golf museum. That's like the wildest
Right?
thing. But art museums, historical houses, history
Wow.
museums, that was just so much a part of how I grew up and
Yeah.
how I like to spend my time when I'm not at work, that it's not a far cry from the things that I know and love, but it's fun to
Right.
have golf in it now.
That's so cool. That's how all that comes together.
Yeah.
So, when you went off to college, what were you studying? Undergrad, where'd you go?
Went to, well, sort of a funny backwards. I went to high school here in New Jersey at
Okay.
the Lawrenceville School. And when I was in high school, in my free time, I wrote a gallery guide to the Princeton Art Museum.
Oh my gosh.
Why did I do that? I'm not sure because I was an
That's
overachiever. So
amazing.
I always knew art history was something that I wanted to do. So from Lawrenceville,
Yeah.
I went on to Cornell
Hmm.
and got a BA in art history and loved it. Just studied all types of art history from modern and contemporary to Byzantine, Islamic, Japanese, developed this kind of expertise in everything and knew I wanted to go to graduate school. In art history, if you want to work in a museum, there's a normal higher education path there. Exactly. And I did a summer program in the Netherlands with a professor at Duke that I really loved. And it was focused on Dutch and Flemish art, kind of 15th to 17th century Dutch and Flemish art. I adored it. And so I went to Duke for my PhD to study with him.
How cool is that? Exactly. Well, and I think I saw on your resume that your travels didn't stop there as it related to kind of your experience. And you were, I think, in France and Italy. Like, talk about some of those experiences, because that just seems beyond amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, so at Duke, I had to teach, which was a very interesting thing to teach Duke undergraduates. And I, of course, was 1 year out of Cornell teaching Duke undergrads.
Yeah.
No one taught me how to teach. I have so much respect for teachers. That is not a place in which I thrive. But as I honed in on kind of what I wanted to focus on, it was the auction market in 18th century Paris. I've spent a lot of time in Paris, more times. It would be embarrassing the number of times I've been there, know it really well. So I kind of honed in on the market for Dutch and Flemish art in the 18th century in Paris. So I lived a good amount of time in France when I was working on my PhD, which was just awesome. I mean, it's such a privilege to just kind of focus on something and be immersed in that. So yeah, my work on my dissertation took me a lot of places. Took me to Austria, to Italy, all over Europe. It was fun.
That's amazing. Obviously good memories, and I've found that I'm sure just in your heart forever and ever. Yeah, have you gotten back since then?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I go often. Now I have the fun pleasure of taking my daughter, who will
I was going to ask you if you had kids in the mix now that maybe got some travels in there. That's so great.
I have a almost 4-year-old and almost 7-year-old. And I'm embarrassed to say my almost 7-year-old, this will be her 4th time in Paris. So
cool.
I'm sure every parent is like, what is wrong with you?
But you know what? Fun. When it's like, you obviously have a level of comfort with traveling there and being there. And some of that's half the battle, right? When you're picking and choosing your vacations, and what places you've been have made a really big impact on you, that you see the value in bringing your kids with you. So I totally get that. That's so neat. So both girls.
Older girl, younger boy.
Oh, you got a good mix.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So 7 and 4. You're busy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It is pure chaos all the time. Yeah. If anyone tries to talk to me between that 7 to 8 a.m. hour, it just doesn't happen.
Like leaving your husband. Like the chances of you getting a conversation in, I get it.
Yeah. It is a real. I have so much respect for people who stay home and raise their children.
Yeah.
I am not wired that way, but
I know. I'm with you. I state that same comment over and over again.
They're a handful.
Well, it gives you a good balance for sure.
That's true.
It's so neat. So after grad school at Duke, where did you go?
So kind of a roundabout story. I came here essentially. So I was living in France working on my PhD. And this is always a funny story. And I don't know if the USGA would like me to tell the story, but this was around 2010. I actually applied for an internship at this museum. Because I was obviously interested in museums. And at that time, I could either move back to North Carolina, or my husband was here in New Jersey. So I decided to move to New Jersey. And I was still writing, so not really ready to do kind of something full-time. So I applied to an internship here. I did not get it.
That's awesome.
So I just continued kind of keeping my eyes open. And I always say I am qualified to do nothing in this organization except what I'm doing. So there was no, scenario in which, well, if you can't do rules, you can do handicapping or champ admin.
Right.
No, I am in museums. And I just kept my eyes open. The previous director, who was here for 32 years, Rand Jarris, who is my amazing mentor, had a PhD in art history. So I was kind of interested how this person ended up at the USGA with a PhD in art history. But in about 2014, a job opened up here to work in the library, and I applied and I got it. So I went right from Duke here.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So so did you walk into this title and role?
No. No,
Okay.
I
So
I
start me
start.
like what you walked into. What were you? I mean, and that's so cool, and it is funny how that
I know.
works. But it is neat too that, and I think, I think the fact that it came back to you in this
Yeah.
form
Oh,
is
completely.
really neat.
Yeah. No, I started in a role to lead the USGA library, and I was in that role for about 4 years. And I was not a trained librarian, but had spent a lot of time, obviously, in
Yeah.
museums and archives, knew
Mm-hmm.
nothing about golf. So, the USGA took a bit of a flyer on me, but it was awesome. It was just such a great way to know the collection. And I worked when I was in that role, the first project that I had to do was, and I always tell this to my
I
colleague,
love
Thomas
this.
Pagel, I had to do some pre work for rules modernization. So,
Hmm.
one of the things we do is we provide a lot of historical context for things that are happening in the building next door. So we had to provide historical precedent for every rule ever in the lead up to rules modernization. So kind of putting
Yeah.
it in a one sheeter to give it. It was terrible.
I can't imagine getting it on one piece of paper.
It was hard. It was really hard. The rules were but it was a great way to just dive into the collection. And it was so awesome to be kind of behind the scenes of this major thing that was happening in golf.
Yes. Yes. Wow.
So yeah, I was in that role for 5 years, and loved it. And then Rand asked me to be the director in 2019, and I sort of said to him, "What are you doing? I don't know how to be a museum director," but figured it out and have evolved a little bit since then, and it's been awesome.
That is
It's
that
been an
is so
amazing
neat.
journey.
So I have to back up a little bit because I have so many questions about even stepping into that role at the library. What was like, obviously you had projects you were working on, like the modernization of golf and providing the Cliff Notes version of what happened in the world of golf and everything that USGA has been a part of and housed historically. So outside of maybe a project like that, what was kind of your day in the life of working there? And did you have a staff that was helping you with odds and ends? Like, what does that look like? I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. There was one other librarian, Nancy
Mm-hmm.
Stulak, who had been there for 35 years. She was kind of this legend at the USGA. And we did everything from answering research questions about, I want to know my grandfather played in the 1950 US Open. What did he shoot? To archiving scorecards that came into the collection. So we also keep the records of all of the championships as they're happening,
Incredible.
to dealing with people writing books. It was really no 2 days were alike.
Couldn't have been.
The summer, April to October, when it's golf season, we're very focused on championships and answering questions.
Yeah.
But it was also collections development. So buying things, adding to the collection, that talk about golf or have golf as their subject matter. So we've got, cookbooks and comic books and sheet music and all of these things about golf that you'd never know about. So it was really fun.
That
Loved it.
is, yeah, that seems like you said, something new every day,
Yeah,
I'm
completely.
sure. And I think so with that, is the library open to the public? Like, could I walk into the library and request that type of information? Or
You could.
those
You
odd and
could.
end
Yeah.
things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're open by appointment,
Okay.
just because we've
Yeah.
answered so many questions and we're so busy. It's just
Yeah.
easier for us to maintain everything. But yeah, you can email the library team and say, I want to come look at this book, or I have a research question on X. And my team, who is one of the things I will say is, it is an absolute joy to have people on my team who are in the job that I used to be in, but are so much more competent than I was. And two trained librarians who are really elevating not only the service they're providing to people, but also our operation to make it just best in class.
That's
But
so
yeah, I think
great.
it is the untapped secret of the golf world, our library, for
Yeah.
sure.
That is insane. Is it all digitized now for the most part? Is there an online library of it, or is it all pretty?
We have an online catalog, and then we also
Okay.
have a digital catalog. So we're in a bit of a digitization
Yeah.
migration process now. But at the end of the day, we're a special collection, so
That's
they're
really
just going to
cool.
be things you're going to have to come in and see yourself. But we
Yeah.
have the first printed reference to golf in the English language from
That's
1457.
incredible.
Yeah,
Jeez.
up through things people are currently writing.
That's really neat.
It's fun.
Now, do you have any funny or just like really memorable moments of somebody either calling you or showing up, whether it was kind of that celebrity, almost like, I can't believe so-and-so just stopped in or called, or anything funny that you remember?
Yeah, I mean, people ask the wildest questions. I remember we got a question, I don't know if it was Dustin Johnson, you know, who was the last US Open champion to win with a beard? Like, why are you asking that question?
It's hilarious.
And it's sometimes striking the balance of, is this a real, you know, is this a real research question, or are you at a bar with your friends trying to settle a bet? We will, of course, treat them the same.
That's
but
fantastic.
Yeah. And then there's a really interesting, I remember, set of books. Adrian, the USGA is probably going to be like, I can't believe Hilary is saying this. There are some books in the library that are like golf novels. So like, you know, with sort of bodice ripping romance novels with stories of like, exactly.
But you're literally bringing it all in there.
Completely, which I just thought was so funny. We collect that and then the most serious things related to our championships.
That's so fun, and to see both ends of it, that's really, really neat. Yeah. So when you stepped into just kind of moving forward into this director role, what were some of the biggest challenges when you went from kind of librarian to director? And obviously the shift of responsibilities, like what did that look like from when you remember?
It was a big shift. I'm a person I'm like 99% self-critical. So I just had a really hard time thinking of myself being able to be in this role, even though looking back on it, you know, I had a lot of those characteristics, but it was a huge change. You know, the library was one part of the museum, one collection. And when I became the director, I had to think about the museum collection, the photography collection, our public programs, the staff, the team, the budget, stuff that I had never, ever done before.
Yeah.
I'd come from the academic world and I didn't really know, you know, the museums I'd worked in were on the curatorial side, so doing research for a catalog or something, but I didn't know a lot of those operational security and budget and some of these other things that were really tough. And I just had to kind of dive in feet first and made some mistakes and relied on a lot of people to help me. And I figured it out eventually.
I bet. It was like baptism by fire to some degree.
For sure.
I'm sure.
For sure.
Just generally, obviously with your past and your experience, there's so much that probably did support that growth in that role. And now today, obviously, moving up to senior director, you're doing something right.
Absolutely.
So it's so neat.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the USGA has been so amazing to me in terms of giving me opportunities that I didn't even imagine possible. And just, so that's been really fun.
It is. And I think working with an organization that realizes you've got the capability of doing that and stretching you into something that you wouldn't generally have probably jumped for. So that's incredible. That's so good. Now I have to ask, I think just diving into a little bit of the USGA, you were there with the move, right? The move down to Pinehurst. What was that like? And how were you involved in that decision? Like where were you in that whole situation?
That's really been my life the last 5 years. I mean, I was around in kind of 2019, 2020 when these conversations started happening. And then we announced our move to Pinehurst in September of 2020. And at that time, we were building this sort of visitor center. So on the first floor would be this USGA experience, which is there now, where you teach people about the breadth and the depth of the work of the USGA. And on the second floor would be a open meeting space, like a hospitality or a media center for a US or Women's Open. It was when Mike Wan came on in 2021 and 2022, and the Hall of Fame was looking at closing. There was this kind of threat for it to become a digital Hall of Fame that Mike said to his board members, hey, we've got this amazing building in Pinehurst. Let's bring the Hall of Fame there. So he said to me, Hilary, let's bring the Hall of Fame to Pinehurst. And it was I mean, museums take years to build,
Yeah.
like 3 to 5. So it was a very quick, and he was like,
Yeah.
we're going to do it. We're going to bring it to Pinehurst, and it's got to be open before the US Open.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I mean, that's really, but it was, for me, career defining to have the opportunity to design and build what's there now.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
And then, so you walked into an existing structure, right? Or did you build onto that building?
No, it was existing. Mm-hmm. So we had to retrofit the second floor to make it fit a consistently growing Hall of Fame. Bring it up to museum standards. We had to do a lot of retrofitting. It took a long time. It took about a year to get the layout set alone.
I'm sure. And does it feel like, and I'm sure you've been into those situations of like, is it enough space? Does it feel like you wish you had, 500 more square feet? Or is it kind of like you've perfected it and it's a good, well-oiled machine now?
It's really good, actually. Mm-hmm. We came up with a good solution. We have about 30 years of growth. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd love to think I'll be here in 30 years. That'll be someone else's problem. And it's a good size. For those who have been to St. Augustine before, it was very big, a bit unmanageable. This is much nicer and approachable for our visitors. So it was a lot of fun.
That's so neat. And I think jumping in, I'd love to jump into just in the, topic of women in golf and the sport in general, like what you've learned in being in your role. And I'm sure you've got an admiration for the women's side and the history of all of it. What is, this is for me not being there or having seen it, but what is the kind of mix and split between highlighting the men's side and the women's side? What does that look like?
So I will say, the women's side is, the stories are just as rich as the men's side, and they just haven't been told that much. So here in New Jersey and in the Hall of Fame, we're constantly finding ways to just shed more light, not only on the, Babe Didrikson, Zaharias, and Glenna Collette's of the world, but also the Ida Dixons, one of the first female golf course architects. And so I think we feel a tremendous responsibility to kind of be the people to uncover those stories.
It's really
because
cool.
it's a really rich history. We're not there yet, I think.
It's probably all a work in progress.
Yeah, it is. We're not there yet, but we're doing better.
That's neat.
So, yeah.
Do you guys, as I think, holder of all this history and data and information and just these archives, do you guys do a lot from the digital aspect and marketing of kind of these stories that you do have? And how do you manage that blend of digital? I guess it is really marketing, but how do you tell those stories? And I'm sure it's multifaceted for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, and this is a trend that's happening in museums. And I think it certainly happened post-COVID, but people want to experience museums digitally, no matter what the subject matter is. And so I think all museums, mine included, are being faced with, what's the balance of putting an object on display so people can come and see it versus doing a digital exhibit.
Yeah.
We are, I mentioned earlier, are in the process of a big digital project to put our collection online, put our exhibits online, just because we're seeing that's how people want to engage with us. Yeah. We do that a little bit, and we rely very heavily on, the USGA's communications and marketing team to help bring our content to life, whether it's through their social channels or the website, just to help create awareness about the collection. But there are things within our own realm that I think we can do that are just going to touch people who are not going to ever be able to come to Liberty Corner or to Pinehurst. And we just want to create awareness. So it's a huge push for us.
I'm sure. I'm sure, and a lot of work, especially in the digitizing process. But the nice part is you probably have an endless amount of, to some degree, content and things to share, and that's what's so neat about it. So, but obviously trying to reach and resonate with those, people that are watching. So now looking at, just from a Hall of Fame, an induction standpoint, what is the cadence of those inductees? Is it once a year? Is it Like, how does that work schedule-wise for you guys?
So we're kind of in the process of completely overhauling that process. So what I will say is, while the USGA, me and my team run kind of the day-to-day operations of the Hall of Fame, the nomination, the selection, the governance part is still run by all of golf's governing bodies. So made up of not only the USGA, but the R&A, the Masters, the PGA, etc. So those are really collaborative decisions that are made at the board level, and we'll kind of do the groundwork and say, this is what we think the right cadence is, but ultimately they have the vote.
Okay.
It's tended to be, I think in the past, every 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
But we're looking at, all of the different possibilities and then hopefully making a recommendation.
Yeah, that's neat. And then the breakdown of, I guess it probably depends of how many people are inducted at those benchmarks. And is there generally always a woman in the mix? Does it just depend on the year? Like, how does that look?
I don't know.
And obviously
the
numbers
to that.
Well, and the numbers obviously are skewed. Majority are going to men. So of course that'll happen.
This year, or in 2024, there were 6 inductees. And I would say, just from a process perspective, that's a lot. That's a big number. Because if you think with every inductee, whether they're alive or deceased, you have to plan content, deduction, artifacts. It's just a lot of people to manage. So I do think 3 to 4 is sort of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And a lot of conversations happening about, nomination, selection. So a lot of brain power happening, but nothing concrete yet.
I'm sure. That's cool. Okay. So good. Thanks for the intel. And obviously you're, like you said, when it changes and it's evolving, there's a lot of things and people going on. What about just probably the last couple of questions, just looking at your role and I think the Hall of Fame and everything you're managing. Are there plans or cool ways that you guys are celebrating women in the sport?
Always, I think. What I would say is, we don't necessarily think, okay, it's March, so it's Women's History Month. Now we have to circle, we got to get out all of our female content. We're doing that constantly.
Yeah.
So it's just a really natural part of what we do. And we try to do it, in every way we can, whether it's kind of a specific female guided tour for our visitors, to a specific exhibit, to highlighting specific artifacts. It manifests itself in a couple different ways, but it's just sort of in the fiber of who we are. And I would say that's really because, I always say my team and I were museum professionals first, and golf is our subject matter. So it's just how we want to tell people about this.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think just looking forward for you, is there anything coming up? I mean, it's crazy that we're cruising through 2025 already, but I was going to say the year ahead, but I guess we've got 3 quarters left. What's in store for you? Is there anything going on that you're excited about or that your team's really working hard at?
Well, I always thought once the Hall of Fame was done, things would slow down. That was a big mistake. I would say continuing to tweak that, because we're learning a lot of things about, now my challenge is running 2 museums that need very different things. So that's also interesting. Visitors, schedules, programs, etc. In May, we have we're lending some objects to an exhibit that's opening in Las Vegas, which is very exciting.
Will that be managed by you guys?
So it's actually a museum called the Hall of Excellence. That's Tom Brady and Jim Gray, the bulk of their collections, and we're lending a bulk of the golf memorabilia. So that's kind of a sports.
How neat.
Yeah, just getting eyeballs on our collection. That's really exciting. And then we have a Payne Stewart exhibit that we're working on in Pinehurst that will open at the end of the summer. And I think this digital project, just trying to create more awareness about what we have and what we do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, it doesn't sound like a shortage of things on your plate.
Nope. It's not.
But you also seem like the person that wouldn't have it any other way. So
I wouldn't,
it's a good mix.
Yeah, I really feel so blessed to be in the role I'm in. I mean, and have the privilege of spending my life in a museum doing what I love, but also what makes the USGA so amazing is there are so many people here from all elements of golf, administrators, marketing professionals, engineers and scientists kind of all working towards something common. And I love that I can kind of be my museum nerd.
That's right.
Yeah, still, go to the US Open and be like, this is the craziest, most amazing thing I've ever seen. So
It's so neat.
It's been great.
I'm sure. And it's something new every day. It's really fun. And I'm sure you fallen in love with the sport just naturally. And
Yes.
that's
My goal is to play more.
I was going to ask you, so how's your game?
So pathetic.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I'm either working or I'm mom. But I'm hoping to play a little bit more this year. I played 3 times last year, which is so bad. And it's very self-imposed. So it's a personal goal of mine to play some more this year.
Well, it is hard. I mean, if you're up in New Jersey, because you're in New Jersey now, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't help that the season is short, and then, yes, I completely understand the kid factor. And the only reason I feel like I've started to golf a little bit more is because we're dragging our kids into it. So
yeah, exactly.
And, it makes for a good, Friday night, let's go play 9 and get peace after. So I'm sure you'll try to do that. And I know, not that life slows down, nor obviously the activities your kids will get into. It is always such a balance to strike, but it seems like you're doing it so elegantly and your absolute best. And that's all we can do.
It's fun. It's true. That's all we can do as moms. Just try to make it through.
But I think it is really cool to highlight the fact that you are in a really, really important role at the USGA, and there's a lot under your belt, but you're doing it all with 2 kids and balancing that life. And I think just showcasing that that's an option for women is always wonderful. And that's what we love to highlight is, one, these really cool jobs that women have found in the sport, and then just everything you're tackling is impressive. So it's really cool to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, the USGA has been a dream to me. It's been so nice to just find something, and I'm learning every day about golf and how it works, and to be in my kind of nerdy museum world and learn from other people has been awesome.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. What's coming up. I know. Well, we can't wait to just keep track of you and watch where you're headed and everything you're putting together over there. So we really, really appreciate your time. We'll let you get back to all the things you're doing today and this week. And again, thanks, Hilary, for your time.
Yep. Love chatting. Thanks so much.
Thanks.